in fact that years of incompetence and mismanagement by the Liberal Party have left Canadians vulnerable today to health crises such as the current pandemic. It did not take another Auditor General's report like the one issued today to confirm just how unprepared this government was for any type of emergency. Canadians are tired of the lockdowns caused by this incompetence. Canadians are angry over the Prime Minister's refusal to stay focused on keeping Canadians safe. He'd rather drag Parliament into the next scandal caused by another one of his government's ethical lapses. As a member of Parliament for the Eastern Ontario riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke, home to Garrison Petawawa, the largest army base in Canada, the decision to participate in today's debate was made by my constituents. The women of Canada who chose to serve their country in uniform as members of the Canadian Armed Forces have a right to be treated with dignity and respect. No woman in today's age should be forced to work in an environment where sexual harassment is tolerated. Today's motion will order Zita Astravis, the former Chief of Staff to the Defence Minister, to come before the Committee on National Defence. Our committee, of which I'm the longest serving member, was forced to take this action as a result of the contempt Ms. Astravis has demonstrated to our parliamentary committee by not responding to our polite request to appear. Zita Astravis has a connection to the Kielburger brothers of We Charity scandal fame. The We Charity boys published an article under their name wherein they slander the people of Thunder Bay, Ontario, by calling that city the hate crime capital of Canada for what the Kielburgers claim is the rates of racist vandalism, assaults, and murders. The Kielburger article quotes extensively from sources that are funded by Zita's new department, where she's currently Chief of Staff. Ms. Astravis is the Chief of Staff to the Liberal Minister of Gun Control. Nasty business, slandering an entire community, as the people of Quebec know. It's obvious the reason Zita Astravis is afraid to appear before the Defence Committee is that the truth will come out of how little respect the Prime Minister has for the women in Canada. In this case, the women who serve their country in uniform as members of the Canadian Armed Forces. It's not as though Canadians have not seen this Prime Minister disrespect women before. The Prime Minister's groping incident, where he made unwanted advances by groping a female reporter while she was trying to do her job, should have been a red flag to the Liberal Party about how he treats women, the kokanee grope. The Prime Minister's decision to throw the only strong women in his party under the bus, women like the former Justice Minister during the SNC-Lavalin scandal, the former Minister of Health for standing up for her colleague, and former Ontario female MP Selina Caesar-Chavannes for showing a backbone, demonstrates a pattern of behavior. Canada's self-called feminist Prime Minister talks a good game about supporting women, but when the chips are down, they're the first ones to take the blame for his own mistakes. The toxicity on Parliament Hill for women, particularly women in his own party, stems from the Prime Minister himself. When the time comes, will Zita Astravis be thrown under the bus to take the fall for the Minister of Defence and the Prime Minister's failure to act on the information from the military ombudsman about General Vance? No wonder she's hiding. Her career should be over. The taxpayers of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke recognize the importance of holding the government accountable. At the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer. That individual taxpayer is the one who gets stuck for paying for all the government mistakes. And today's opposition motion is about upholding the principles of democracy. It's about the rights of all Canadians through their elected representatives to hold politicians accountable when they're busy spending their money. Blocking the work of parliamentary committees, stalling until an unwanted election is called, will not prevent Canadians from eventually finding out the truth, which is what the Liberals are afraid of, the truth. Just like how afraid the Liberals are, the public will find out how many tax dollars have been wasted while Canadians get sick from COVID-19. The We Charity scandal is, without a doubt, a Liberal Party scandal. For a very accurate summation of the We scandal, I quote from a veteran journalist, Rex Murphy's following observations in the March 17th edition of the National Post, addressed to the Kielburger brothers about the We Charity scandal. And I encourage anyone watching this debate to read all the articles written by Rex Murphy about the We Charity scandal. Quote, who solicited the Prime Minister as a huge draw and speaker for so many We Day rallies, and who billboarded his presence? Who invited his mother Margaret and his brother Alexander to your We Days? Who paid out fees and expenses close to $300,000 to them? Who drew the Prime Minister's wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, to act as one of your charity's ambassadors? The point of all these questions, just to be clear, Mark and Craig, is to point out the fact that you invited, and most times paid, members of the Prime Minister of Canada's family to boost your We Charity Day pitches and add credibility to them. And it's as near to certainty as we can hope for in the Vale of Tears that the frequent presence of the Prime Minister before and after he became Prime Minister, along with his family members, must have been a very strong asset in getting schools to go to We Day and corporations and media to support it. If there's a scandal here, it's a better description of its character. Canadian-based international charity enterprise had deep and continuous association with the leader of the Liberal Party, the Prime Minister of Canada, and his family, to the mutual benefit of the Liberal Party and the charity enterprise. We received the highest, strongest endorsement Canada has to offer. The Prime Minister and his family were, to all intents and purposes, acting as we patrons. We also received, prior to the singular contract, to distribute vast millions to Canadian young people, grants from the federal government. Out of the unclouded blue, the huge sole source and mysterious contract was made known, along with WE's administrative fee of $43 million. Many people, not just the press of Parliament, looked at this and asked, what is this? A private enterprise with a very heavy access to the party in power, very close association with its leadership, gets chosen over the civil service to hand out millions of dollars to Canadian citizens? A thing never heard of before. The interwoven, mutually beneficial connections between we, the Prime Minister, and his family more than justified a Commons Committee to ask We Charity necessary questions. And therefore, it was right and proper that a committee of our federal parliament mounted an open inquiry whether We Business got special treatment because we and the Trudeau family are so close in compact and style. The committee's unquestionable remit is to probe why one family, Kielburger Incorporated, and another family, that of the Prime Minister of Canada, were so webbed in a common enterprise, and why $43 million of Canadian taxpayers' money was going to Kielburger Inc. for administering a public program of the Government of Canada. End of quote. The questions raised by Rex Murphy are all the questions being asked by Canadians who are concerned about propriety in government. Parliament is obligated to report the facts to Canadians. The Prime Minister feels he's in too much. If the Prime Minister feels he's in too much of a conflict of interest to come before a parliamentary committee, then he's obligated to order his staff members, Ben Chin, Rick Theus, and Emmett Patel Singh, to appear before Parliament and answer all of our questions. Knowing the close association between Ben Chin and Gerald Butts, probably Butts should be in the lineup also. Well, we can save ordering the puppet master to appear before Parliament for another day. If the Prime Minister and his party are not prepared to do the right thing, then Parliament can do the right thing. In conclusion, once the Parliament does the right thing and passes today's motion, I want the women in uniform to know that I have their back. Let's hope other Canadian parliamentarians have their back as well.
Questions and comments. Qu'est-ce que commentaire? The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for her speech. And of course, she knows I want to ask a question around wild salmon, but this is a very important issue. Mr. Speaker, on March 3rd, 2021, the Defense Committee summoned Gary Walbourne, the former ombudsman, to testify. And he testified the details of the March 1st, 2018 meeting between himself and the minister. And he reported that the minister refused to look at the evidence against General Vance. He also testified that there was a campaign to oust him as ombudsman after his 2017 governance report was issued, and that the minister and department created a toxic workplace for him and his staff after that. Now, I met Mr. Walbourne several times, and he's an upstanding citizen, Mr. Speaker, as far as I've ever could see. Do the Conservatives agree that the Office of the Canadian Forces and National Defence Ombudsman should be made a fully independent office of Parliament, so that we don't have this evidence? Because we know on March 12th, 2021, the Minister of Defense returned to testify before committee, and he confirmed that he forwarded the allegations to the PCO. And even later, the evening after he met with Mr. Walbourne, the Minister of Defense issued a statement saying he disagreed with the testimony of the former ombudsman.
So we haven't heard what the disagreement was, but certainly it's not only been the recommendation of the former ombudsman for the military to have a separate and reportable to Parliament office, an independent funding from the Defense Department, but Minister Deschamps had recommended similarly for the reporting of the sexual misconduct.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. In my research, I understood that Craig and Mark Kielburger had, under a Conservative government, taken some actions. I'd like to ask my colleague, what are the ties between the Conservative Party and the Kielburger brothers? Could a charity like we existed under a government had it remained Conservative?
I can tell you one thing, the Kielburger We Charity organization has certainly flourished under the Liberals. In fact, they've even put together a web of studies supporting one another, funded by the current government of Canada, in particularly the public safety minister, to help in a side mission of making all Conservatives, casting aspersions upon them. And once this comes to light, I think we'll see how their involvement in politics is more straightforward with respect to favoring the radical Liberals now and in the future.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
You'll notice, Mr. Speaker, she completely avoided answering the question from the member from the bloc. Rightfully so. I understand why she would want to do that. But you know, Madam, Mr. Speaker, my question to this member is, a similar motion came forward back in 2000, I believe it was 2013 on November the 6th, where there was a similar request for Prime Minister Harper to appear before committee on the scandal that involved Mike Duffy. This member voted against it. She was a member at that time. What's the difference, Mr. Speaker? Why does it warrant it now, but back in 2013, when she voted against it, it was okay to vote against it then?
Honourable member for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, it is the Parliament today and the government of the day today that is in question. And it is this Prime Minister who is directly involved in the scandal and the work against the women in the military who deserve to have the proper conduct of their superior officers and their co-workers. And deteriorating our national security is something that cannot be tolerated by the Canadian public.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
You see, Mr. Speaker, I didn't ask her about if it was the government of the day or what the government. I asked her about her vote. Why did she vote the way she did? So she didn't answer my question. She didn't answer the question from the member from the bloc, but I digress. Mr. Speaker, the government House Leader has made an excellent argument in his speech today. As long been the case, political staff are accountable to their minister and who are in turn accountable to this House. And I believe that it is something that everyone